As I said, welcome to the show.
Great being here. Thanks for having me.
Listen, when I saw the topics that you wanted to talk about, I was excited to grab some time. So we're going to kind of dig in.
Awesome.
So much to cover, never enough time. And I think what's always good for our listeners is to get to the human side of our guests, the authentic part. I think you're sitting in New York. Are you
in Brooklyn, in particular?
Brooklyn. So before we get into some of the data, how are you doing? How is Brooklyn doing? What has this past 12, 16, 18 months been? I mean, you're right in finance, and that is a mecca in New York City. So just love to kind of walk us through how your life has changed. Maybe for the better, maybe for the worse.
Yeah, I have to say I've been very lucky comparison to most. I have a very supportive partner and family that has made this very, has allowed even the harder times of this pandemic to be still fruitful in certain ways of self-improvement and getting more time with loved ones. The earlier days were very tough because my family's in healthcare. They're mostly doctors. I'm the black sheep of the family. So it was very difficult for me knowing that, my sister, for example, could be in the emergency room working with patients, being very short on PPE. So that was not a fun part, but, eventually they figured it out. They got through it. PPE and various things were made available to, these life-saving workers. And that was the hardest part for me in the beginning. And that wasn't me directly impacted, but my family. So I'm very lucky. I get to sit behind a computer and work. I've been able to regulate my day by, focusing on the things that I can control and focus on self-improvement and various things like that. So I've been very lucky comparison to most, but there have definitely been some times during the pandemic that have been trying, especially as I knew others and my loved ones have been directly in the chaos of what the pandemic has brought.
I appreciate you sharing that. I think it's one of the unique moments in my lifetime that globally I can actually identify and understand what you're going through, right? It's a weird time where we all, I can't tell you a time that I can remember that I can walk into almost anybody and say, I experienced the same thing. I might have handled it differently or had other challenges, but we all watched TV and we all had to stay home for many months. So I appreciate you sharing that. And for me, that one of the reasons why I started the community and it was loneliness. I was in San Francisco. It's February. San Francisco shuts down pretty early. And that's February and March, I'm like crying on my couch because I'm sad. I'm in shelter and isolation. The market's going crazy. The president just shut the borders and it's just sad. And I reached out to my mentor and he was like, why don't you start connecting people? Like everyone wants a hug. Everyone needs a hug. And what has happened is I was just able to meet with a lot more people at the senior executive level because everyone wasn't traveling. Calendars were a little bit easier to get on. So, and then through there, we built out this podcast. It's not something I've ever had a background in and wanted to do, but it lets me meet people. It lets me connect people. The two things I want to do, meet and connect. So thank you.
Thank you. This is a great platform. It's nice to connect with like-minded individuals and learn new things.
Yeah. On a lighter side, please tell me you can get a table now at Peter Luger's or something.
That's actually that's been easier to get to certain restaurants. That is actually one of the things in Brooklyn. You'd be surprised. A lot of people stayed around. I had heard that Manhattan had gotten pretty barren and life had in certain times disappeared. Brooklyn has stayed fairly lively, even in the worst of times, plus or minus like a week or two where we were in complete lockdown. But yeah, the people are trying to make the best of their lives, and for the most part, I think we'll eventually, beat this thing. There's light at the end of the tunnel.
Right. I'm smirking as you're saying that. I was thinking about you in Brooklyn saying, you made it through COVID, but you've got really bad cholesterol now because you've been crushing these foods that you shouldn't. So like the COVID didn't kill them. It was the steak.
Yeah. Well, that's why you got to wake up early, go for that run, mix it up a little bit. That's actually been one of the things I've been able to actually make more time for, not having the commute as much, not
Right.
Being able to actually self-reflect a little bit more and take care of some of the things that maybe I was ignoring ahead of this. So, there's always a way of taking even the worst of moments and finding that, that shining star. And for me in particular, my partner, is a very strong person, and she's always worked in industries that are what I would call very people oriented, where they've seen terrible catastrophes and war and stuff like that. She works in an NGO and right now for the UN. So over the years, the kind of things she's, taught me about life have made it more, easier to say, life is good right now. I have, a lot of good things in my life, and many others do not. So,
Yeah.
just got to make the best of it.
I think you picked up on something that I've really appreciate you saying: self-reflection, self-awareness. It's something that's important to me, and I've had more time to do it. I've got back into journaling, and it's something that I haven't done in a while, but I feel like because of COVID and forced isolation, I got to spend a lot of time with myself. And I think I'm living my best life, but the world might not be living the best world. So it's not the best night life. It's not, it's a different. But, for me, right, I think I've been better at managing calendar, better about being more self-reflective. I think my strategic thinking time has increased, so my execution time has decreased, because I think I'm being more mindful. And I think people around me also are getting used to like 15-minute meetings, 45-minute meetings. And are you seeing that as well with you and your work?
Yeah,
you're in a hyper growth, but are you seeing the change now on calendar scheduling?
Yeah, I think more than ever, the opportunity to self-reflect and strategize is definitely more available. So people used to joke at work that I should just set up a deli counter and one of those number pickers. Literally, there was a queue of people, and it was like the next calling number 5. Okay, calling number 6, and that's great, right? It shows how important data is to running a company in the modern day, and that there's always that next person that needs you or needs your team to help them to solve something, to guide. And one of the interesting things that I noticed is that dynamic shifted a lot. Obviously, we're not in the office, and obviously we're not physically in the same space, but I feel that there have been aspects where people are more strategic and sometimes more efficient in how they're communicating, because they know that it's like there's that barrier. And so, yeah, I found that like meetings, outside of when people are, trying to get that additional level of social social team cohesion, I feel like meetings have been better organized, because one, people are actually potentially ahead of meetings, getting a few moments to even think about what they want to talk about in meetings, and more people are sending around agendas. And so there's a dynamic change of being more thoughtful of like what a meeting means and what someone's time, how to best, use their own and other people's time.
You have a culture I could work in. I get that culture, and it's, I try to mentor that and teach that to people who are around me. I'm like, for me, I need an agenda on before I go in, so I could be more thoughtful, or I could be more productive, because I too am running meeting to meetings. And I, just like everybody else, I wake up in the middle of the night and I'll look at my calendar, I'll think about my day, or however I want to organize my day. And it's nice to be able to have all that information. So I want to appreciate you just opening up to all these conversations. So now one more question, and I want to get to operational versus analytical data, because I really want to dig into that. I think you raised your last round during that COVID pandemic. Was it probably the last check before everything stopped, or did it stop and you got, because I know it's a weird time, but did you just make it, or did you like?
It basically happened on the day that everything went crazy. So it happened, I think, about a few days, or I wouldn't say it happened hours or to that extreme, or seconds, but it was close enough. And we've been very lucky at iCapital, have amazing partners and clients. We're looking to empower this, the alternative investment, life cycle. So there's a lot of interest and there's a lot of partnership that's happening in the space. So we're very lucky as a company. So, various other companies have had troubles during the pandemic. We've, if anything, seen massive growth during this.
It was scary times. I mentor a few and I invest and I'm involved in certain startups, and one that I'm part of as an advisor to the CEO, they closed their round and literally money was wired like 4 days before. It was just, and pretty good valuation, enough money to last more than, this was a Series B round. So a pretty, and boy, oh boy, were they, late March, they had other problems, right? We all had different problems in March and April, but job security wasn't one of them. I mean, at the finance part. So, and there was a lot of startups I saw that was just like, if your fundraising cycle is at the wrong time, it was some scary stuff. So congratulations on getting that and coming out even stronger.
Thank you.
Not easy. Not easy. And I'm sure that helped retain a few more people, just knowing that there was a little bit more money in the bank.
It's an amazing group of people, right? We have a very strong team, across our technology and business. And, it's been a lot of fun growing the business over the past 3 years. And, there's so much more to do. So I'm excited for the next step.
Heck yeah. So operational data, analytical data. Let's go there.
Yeah. So like anything else, like at iCapital, what we're trying to do is power the investment lifecycle, democratize alternative investments. And, historically, it has been a place that has only been available to like your Warren Buffetts of the world, like people that have billions of dollars. And so, what we're trying to do is basically make private markets more accessible. And in order to do that, because it's a very disconnected world, you have to really manage operational data extremely well. And it's not the most exciting thing for some data professionals because everyone wants to get to the cool, fancy, shiny part of data science and analytics and all of that. But what we focused on, which I think is our special sauce, particularly at iCapital, is how do we do a turnkey integration? How do we get people onto the platform with very little to no resistance and make that data a part of our ecosystem? And why that matters is once you get data onto your system and you approach the problem as there's a single process, there's a single system, there's a single database, it allows us to empower the business to be actually owners of data, which many years ago was harder and harder to do. But over time, and as we've all kind of perfected our craft, it's become easier to do. And as a result of that, we've gotten to the point where as we get further to the, what I'll talk about as the data scale, starting with operational data, working your way to an analytical world, you get the ability to make sure that your teams that are more focused on the analytical side of data are not spending all their time cleaning data. And a variety of people on your podcast in the past have talked about garbage in, garbage out. And, everyone has these problems, no matter if you're in financial services or healthcare. So you need more than ever to have your business teams manage actually the cleanliness of your data. So you're freeing up your more technical, data-driven people to actually solve the problems with the data, not necessarily spend all their time cleaning the data. And what that ends up doing is allowing the business teams to not only directly manage the data, but it actually allows them to better manage their overall process and reduce errors and make it repeatable. And then you get this beautiful feedback loop. And we started down this aggressive push towards turnkey integrations and management of operational data over 3 years ago. And one of the things that's been interesting to see is as we've been going down this path, right now it's very linear in the sense of you're working on this operational data. And at some point you say, what, we have all these applications and services. It would be great to have more of an analytical view of the data. And because we've invested so much in managing that operational data, it becomes a lot easier to have that conversation of structuring it into a warehouse. And even more so over time, where a lot of companies are trying to go is to then leverage their analytical capabilities to drive operational improvements in their processes and even eventually potentially package their data, because one of the areas in which that separates a lot of companies nowadays is their proprietary data that they grow over time. So being able to take that and turn what is a very linear looking process of operational data flowing into analytical, and actually finding that it's not a direct one-to-one linear relationship. It's actually more of a cycle, and it's a constant evolving movement of operational data into analytical data that feeds back into your operational process, and finding that harmony between those things. But you can't do that unless your number one priority at the start of any data program is focusing on how do you do your interfaces and your onboarding of data in a turnkey fashion, and how do you manage the quality of it, and ultimately how do you focus in on allowing the business to do what should be fundamental, is managing their own data, since they're the experts on it.
There's a few follow-ups I want to add to here. And first off, very well stated and articulated, thought through. I keep reading about single pane of glass. I want a single pane of glass of data. Does that sit on top of the operational and analytical, or am I misthinking about a use of a term?
The way I look at it is, we want to commoditize data. We want to make it so that data is kind of provided as a service. It's not something that someone has to go out of their way to solve. We want to think about it as a product. We want to think about it with thoughtfulness, so that it's not about people trying to chase down something, and it's about someone just going to a simple interface, typing in what they want and getting it back. And it doesn't require them to be understanding of how to write a Python script or SQL or any of those things. It's really just about making these things turnkey and product facing. And so I like to call it data as a service. And I like to even go further and say that, just like what happened in the mobile space many, many years ago, where it was, not everyone was mobile oriented. You had smaller people within the space focusing on the mobile problem. And I feel like data science and analytics is kind of at that current state where, just as I was saying, data as a service, I kind of think of it as data science as a service. And although your data science may not always be directly connected to an end user trying to leverage it,
yep,
you might want to be doing that for your developers, so that you can have particular people that are specialized in something provide these very valuable insights on their processes. Not everyone has to be a machine learning specialist
right.
But it's just not, it doesn't have to be the world that we live in. So this dynamic, both for providing data seamlessly to the business, needs to be thought about for how developers and other technical members work with the data as well.
Well, the other thing that brings to mind in this analogy, which I haven't really thought about to put it together, the onboarding, not just of tools, but the onboarding of teammates. Because if the sales team uses Salesforce the correct way, then you've just helped delight the data scientist 5 months from now, right? Or if I'm using that as a designer marketing or someone in tech. But you're right, that's the other part of be thoughtful. We filled out all of these forms and fields for a reason. You do your best to fill them out. You're going to save some people who are very expensive a lot of time.
Yeah, exactly. And you would have also made your process better. So you don't even have to be, it's not even it's not even about thinking about others. You can actually be at the same time helping yourself out simultaneously. So you get the best of both worlds, actually.
Yeah, it's interesting. And the other thing you said, which I'm starting to see more of, is, and again, I don't know if I'm using the words the right way, so forgive me, low code, no code, right? And you're right, it's the generation coming up behind us can do a lot of this stuff. Look at where you and I were a few years ago. We're trying to build web pages. Now it's Wix, Webflow, WordPress.
Yeah.
That's kind of like the future of not all machine learning, not all data, but it's getting there.
Yeah. And for the better, commoditization allows us to really get to newer ideas that we haven't been able to, because not everyone needs to be a software developer. I consider myself a data enthusiast. I always say that I'd be insulting, software developers if I truly called myself one, even though I did in the past have a job doing that. It would be insulting to the people that I respect so heavily, because I have a great love for data and I'm an enthusiast for data. But I wouldn't want to muddy the water with titling myself that.
Oh, I know. So I've got my final question, and it's maybe some advice to the audience, and definitely I'm curious to hear the answer. So you worked at some pretty great, successful brands. Then you took a chance on a smaller brand that now became a rocket ship. Can you walk us through maybe the decision-making process for when you got the phone call to maybe come join this new company that maybe no one ever heard of versus the other company that almost everybody has heard of? Like, what was that like?
Yeah, so I think to go even a step of many, many years before that, how I actually came to financial services was extremely weird. You might remember this website, and it probably still exists, Craigslist.
Of course.
And I just answered a random ad on it, and BlackRock, the largest financial institution on the planet, responded to me. Hey, do you want to interview in New York, et cetera. So one, I kind of fell in the financial services randomly.
Okay.
I was writing code in manufacturing in the life sciences research and development side. So when I first joined financial services, for me, it was just a matter of learning everything that I could and doing the best that I could in the industry that I kind of plopped into. And over the years, I've been lucky enough to work at BlackRock and JP Morgan, very large institutions. For me personally, when I was actually thinking about leaving JP Morgan, the interesting thing was I was actually split between two jobs, one at iCapital versus actually one which was a startup. I was actually very lucky to know a lot of amazing people that were already at iCapital. So that definitely,
De-risk, right? Friendly face. Yep.
Friendly face. People that I knew thought about data the same way, that really cared about, building a true technology platform. So that was a part of it. And past a certain point, it was also, this idea of I've done this for a while. I want to try something different. And when I weighed the options between iCapital being a little bit more risky. It was a small company. Who knew what was going to happen at the time? There was only tens of people when I joined, versus the other options at the time. I just said, you know what? Life is short. Try it out, see what happens. And now we're at, this hyper growth rocket ship direction. And it was a great choice. And, it was great, reconnecting with people that I had previously worked with at BlackRock and greatly respected. You have in our company, Tom Forden, Mark Prisco. These are heavyweights in the industry. Especially, these are the guys that built out Aladdin, the largest financial platform in the world. So it wasn't a hard decision to be working with these people again. It was more of a decision around like, do I take the risk of going to a small company? And, after doing that benefit analysis in my head, I said pretty quickly, you know what, let's do it.
Were you there early enough to be interviewed or meet the CEO, or were you a little bit later?
So I don't actually think I was interviewed by the CEO. It was at a point where there were other members of the ExCo that did interview me. It was at that borderline of where the CEO used to, he had to sign off on everyone. It was still at that time where everyone had to be signed off by the CEO.
I know. It's like, that's what I say to everybody when you were like, you're experiencing that beautiful moment of building a startup where the CEO, not in a negative way, knows your name, knows who you are.
No, we're
JP
very
Morgan
close.
Chase, they don't know you. Right. It's sick. Right. You're going to be going from this, and you're part of that early group because the rest of the people are still building, but they're also doing building and maintenance. You were on that build team, and it's a totally different mindset. For me, I'm more your DNA. I got the basics from the big institutions. Then I love the chaos of early. I love the upside of early. Work from home and this type of work with COVID has just made it a better work-life balance. Because it's tough. It's tough, but it's exciting. And now, are you on Carta? Is that where you have all your stock and shares? Is everyone using Carta out there?
I think that's actually what we're
crazy.
Yeah, it's a new world for me personally. I've never been in a startup, so the dynamic is still very new for me.
I'm psyched to it.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm psyched. Well, listen, I got vaccinated, Pfizer, 2 shots. I will be coming to New York probably in the next 3 months. I'm still not 100%. That's my choice. I'm not 100% comfortable yet, but maybe if you're around this summer when we come out there, I'd love to have a drink with you.
Yeah, definitely.
I think hopefully by then, I feel like June 15th is when everyone feels like So I got vaccinated. I'm sorry about the wind, but I feel like Superman, but I have only taken off the first top 2 buttons. I'm not ready yet to rip the shirt off, but I got the tie to the side. The 2 buttons are out, but not yet. I'm not ripping out the suit. I'm still taking it cautiously. Man, easy to see why you've done and you've been and what you've achieved. You're likable, you're smart, and you have a good sense of who you are in a great way. So we know you're better than you are because you're this humble. That's what we like. So this is great. I'm a data enthusiast and I appreciate this. So we are a community. There are people I want to connect you with. So there are people we know in fintech. Do you want me to connect you people in your space? Do you want me to connect you with startups? Like, who do you want to meet? And the reason why I ask it is because we are still in isolation, my goal is to meet you and have you meet others, right? So is there a sector, a person, like who can I help you make 2 or 3 intros for?
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea of randomly meeting people. I think that's something that was really lost during the pandemic. So, I'm always happy to connect with a variety of different people. I love being challenged. So if you know anyone that thinks about something very differently, like I would love to connect with.
I got someone in mind.
Yeah, okay.
I got someone in mind. He's the guy that helped do the government auction of 5G spectrum. Dude is like next level.
Cool.
Like he talks to me, I'm like, I'm just gonna do this because I have no idea what you're saying. But just genuine people, like empathetic. That's who's on our show. People are empathetic and mindful. All right. Well, this was a cool show. There can be some people I'm going to connect you with. So I appreciate you being on the show. We're sponsored by Pandio. Check them out. And again, thank you for being part of the podcast.
Pleasure.